Welcome to the Refurbishment Mastery podcast with me, Martin Rapley. If you're a property investor who is worried about paying too much for your next property, concerned that you don't know how to manage a refurb, or scared that you will be ripped off by a builder, then this is for you. In this podcast, I share over 30 years of experience of managing refurbishments and conversions to help you make more profit, save your time, and ultimately enjoy the process. On with the podcast. Hi guys, and welcome to this episode, which I want to start with a question. Are you a genius? Well, Einstein said everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And what this is saying is that in reality, we all have our skills, we all have our strengths, but in turn, we also have our weaknesses. And in many ways, Einstein is saying what we have to do is play to our strengths and to some extent get less worried if we are not so strong at some other elements. Now, this is completely the reverse of the school system to a certain extent. The school system says that if you are really good at English but not so good at maths, then you should spend more time working on your maths to bring it up to the level of English. What Einstein suggests, and other people since have suggested, is that if you are particularly good at English, then you should spend more time refining your skills in English and become really good for it. And ultimately, from a business perspective, earn through your natural ability in English. Now, where does this go with project management and refurbishment mastery and things like that? Well, bear with me. It'll all come together as I go through this episode. Back in 2013, I was introduced to a profile test called the Wealth Dynamics test. It was a paid test. It took me probably 15 minutes or so to complete. And from it, I got a full chart showing me how I fitted in to what were considered by the person who put them together to be the key 8 profiles, categories, shall we call them, of what was needed to run a business, really. And from that, I knew what I came out at the strongest at, and also, in turn, where I was the weakest. The person who put that test together is a chap called Roger Hamilton, who's actually a British guy. He was born in Scotland, but actually seems to spend most of his time in the Far East now, I think over in Singapore. I have actually met him. I did work with him. He was my mentor for a year or so, doing some business development back in 2017, 2018, somewhere around about that kind of time. As I say, that's a paid test. There is an alternative test. It's an abridged version of the same test, and it's called the Genius test, which is free. And now, because it's abridged, it takes a lot less time to complete that test. Probably 2, maybe 3 minutes are the absolute maximum. And what it does, it comes out and kind of puts everyone into one of 4 categories based upon the 4 most 4 main profiles within the Wealth Dynamics test. But however, that in itself, even though it's an abridged version, it's a free version, it doesn't go into anywhere as much depth. I have used that extensively within my business. Every time I bring a new member of the team into the business, I always ask them to carry out a Genius test. As I say, it's free, so why wouldn't you get this knowledge? And as a result of them carrying out that test, I've got a better idea as to whether their dominant profile is right for the role that they are actually taking on in my business or applying for in my business. So if you've never done a Genius test before, I've put the link to it in the show notes. So I'd encourage you to stop the podcast now, go to the show notes, find the link, click on that, and quickly complete the questions in there. I think there's only 4 or 5 questions, and I say quickly because quickly is important. You shouldn't spend a lot of time analyzing the questions. To get the most from the test, you should read the question and click on the answer that you believe is right for you. The view is that your first answer is potentially the right answer. So if you want to do that test, then stop the podcast now. If you don't want to do the test, you're welcome to obviously carry on listening. But if you go back and do the test, it will make a lot more sense to you. So hopefully a lot of you have now done that particular test. And if you haven't, stop now and restart. But hopefully you've now got an idea, and you will have come out with one of 4 profiles. Now you'll get some basic information. You'll get an email explaining what those profiles mean, or what your profile actually means. But I want to interpret that to more of the extent that relates to being a project manager. Now, just to be completely transparent, as with all of these things, you will now have got yourself into a funnel that will be marketing Roger Hamilton's business. So if you don't want to know more about how he helps entrepreneurs, then ensure that you unsubscribe from that at some point. But to be fair, I've been in his funnel for a long time. There's a lot of good information out there. But just be aware that if you don't want it, you'll need to unsubscribe. But there's nothing sinister about Roger Hamilton. As I say, I've worked with him in the past, and would go back to him if the circumstances were right in the future. So he can be trusted in that respect. Now, what have you got in the way of the profile? You will have got a profile of dynamo, blaze, tempo, or steel. And whichever profile you got, as I say, you will have got some kind of follow up that will give you a bit more information. But just to keep everything together on this podcast, dynamo profiles are ideas type people. They're kind of really creative. They've had 3 good ideas before breakfast, and they want to get out into the world, and they want to solve a problem, and they want to they just want to get going. They are really good at getting things started in the first place. So and you probably know some of those people, and of course some of that may be you as well. You may well have come out as a dynamo. The next profile is blaze. You might have come out as a blaze profile. Now these people are kind of natural networkers. They're natural marketeers. They're great with people. They were always the life and soul of the party. They were the person that is always chatting, keeps things moving, keeps things going forward. The third profile is tempo. Tempo profile people have got their feet on the ground. They're often a little bit quieter. They're people that get on and do things. They're the world's organizers to a certain extent. They're the people that often don't make a big sound about it, but will just make sure that things happen. And then the fourth profile, steel, are much more detail orientated. They're often quite introverted. They're more analytical, and they will again make sure things happen, but you won't even know necessarily that they're making it happen. They're often behind the scenes, tweaking the system, fixing the code, repairing the engine behind the scenes when no one else is actually paying any real attention to what they're doing. So those are the 4 basic overviews. And as I say, if you've taken the test, you will have a little bit more information and a little bit more detail there than I've just given you. But how can we use those profiles to understand how each profile would manage our projects, because each profile would manage their project in a different way. And some of you are going to find it easier than others. And that's the bit that I really want to unpack in the remainder of this episode. So let's start with the Dynamo profile people. You are going to be excited to get new projects going. You are inclined to rush into them, possibly before they are fully designed, possibly before they're fully worked through, possibly before you've got all of the paperwork in place. You are going to naturally just want to get going. Those projects you've got, you could find you've over designed them. They might be stunningly looking properties, but for a market that don't need stunningly looking properties, because your inclination will be always to have the most inspiring properties. And the thing to watch out as a Dynamo profile is that whilst you're going to be brilliant at getting things started and you're going to be excited to get things started, you will likely get bored part way through. So you will likely run out of steam and want to go on to the next project before you've finished the existing project. And of course, if that project is the delivery of a property for tenants to move into, you're going to find the end a real drag. And you've just got to knuckle down and get on with it and get it over the line. But you do need to be very, very careful that you haven't gone in all guns blazing far too quickly without being clear what you're trying to achieve. And a common mistake for Dynamo profiled people could very easily be that they haven't done a detailed budget, haven't necessarily got terms and conditions in place, may not even have a firm quotation from builders, because the excitement of getting going overwhelms some of the back of house detail that can be needed to deliver a project through. So maybe you've your Dynamo profile and you've seen that in yourself. Maybe you've seen yourself deliver projects in that way and not really being sure what was going on and why you're struggling towards the end of the project. Well, there we go. There is the answer, and it is normal for people of your profile to have those kinds of challenges. Now, if you are a Blaze profile, you are going to build up a great rapport with the team. You are going to love being with the team. You want a big team around you. So you'll happily go out and get yourself an architect, a quantity surveyor, a structural engineer. You'll talk to lots of builders, and you will manage everyone very much from a mate perspective. And this big team around me, and we're all mates, and we're all going down the pub on Friday, and we are all just going to make this happen between us. Now, Blaze profiles are generally not very good with paperwork. In fact, they're even worse with paperwork than Dynamo. They would rather meet, they would rather speak everything through. So you need to be very, very careful that that you're speaking to your builders and explaining what you need. You need to be very careful that they've got clarity about what you need, and that where necessary, it is actually written down. You're going to potentially need to slow down or use someone else to put together the contracts to help you manage the budget, because most of the time Excel and IT systems are not going to be your favorite thing. You are going to, as I say, be much happier being out and about, boots on the ground at the project, talking to people, rather than process in the background and certainly missing detail and things like that. So do be very, very careful if you are a Blaze profile. I'll give a little bit more of a summary as I get through further into the podcast. The next profile to cover off is the tempo profile. Now, tempo profiled people they're the reverse of dynamo. So everything they do is much slower to get off the ground. But as a result, they are much more grounded people. So they will sometimes get in their own way, putting together a task list. They'll sometimes get overwhelmed by how many tasks they've actually got, because they're the reverse of the dynamo profile. They often won't see the big picture. They'll often get embroiled in the weeds and can sometimes get too much involved in the detail. Let's jumping in to make sure that you have everything you need. Now, in a number of these podcasts, you would have heard me talk about my community, and I want to ensure that you know how you can join that community. Obviously, within these podcasts, there's a limit to the detail I can go into the recording, and of course, a lot of things are very generic. So what if you had access to join me on a Zoom call for 90 minutes every single week in a group coaching environment? You could get your questions answered whenever they come up and learn from other members' questions. Plus, you also get 10 hours of training videos, an HMO refurbishment case study, some sample documents and checklists that will help you run your projects far more effectively. Membership of my community is just £89 a month. You get the first month free, and you can also cancel anytime after that. Plus, as a listener of this podcast, there's a promo code to help you save £20 every single month that you remain a member. So just make a note of VIP discount 20, VIP discount 20, all in capital letters, and put that into the checkout. You'll find the checkout on my website, www.refurbishmentmastery.com. Scroll down the page, you'll find the link for the Project Management Accelerator. Use the promo code VIP discount 20 and you'll be signed up at just £69 a month. I look forward to seeing you in that community very, very soon. Now back to the podcast. Again, because they're the reverse of the dynamo people and they're not going to be so good at getting things off the ground in the first place, they will be, and they are great at finishing things off at the end and getting all of the paperwork in place and documenting things and sweeping up all of those loose ends. So maybe you see that in yourself. Maybe you see that is the reverse of your profile if you're a dynamo profile, and you're thinking, oh my word, that's everything I'm not so good at. Well, those profile people are tempo people, and they are, acknowledge and accept that they are the reverse of the dynamo. And in turn, the fourth profile, steel profile, is the reverse of the blaze profile. So the steel profiles can be very prone to overanalyzing deals. They will be getting down to the last nut and bolt, the last screw, the last penny in analyzing deals. And whereas the blaze profile people probably won't analyze, they'll make a decision because, oh, he's a nice fella and I need to buy the property from him. Steel profiles are the reverse. They will overanalyze and go into a lot of detail, and as a result probably reject some deals that could be successful deals, but they'll reject them on the basis that, well, if the worst happens and then this goes wrong and then this happens, this doesn't stack up as a deal. And that is the extreme of the blaze, who will be, well, he's a nice fella and I like him, so I'm buying the property. And you can see how that, there's obviously loads of loads in the middle between the two extremes I'm talking about, and that's why you would do the full test, because you'd get a much more not rounded awareness as to where you are in all of the profiles. But for what I'm talking about here, you can feel and see that there is definitely something in the middle between the two extremes. Steel profiles will map out the processes. They'll be really clear who's doing what, when. They'll be great with timelines. They're great at putting together budgets. They've got the detail in them to be able to put together the contract documents or even take the time to read through contract documents. And they'll manage the team rather than be mates with the team. So again, the reverse of the Blaze profile, they'll talk to the team. That won't be a problem, but they will manage them rather than be their mate. They will get success through managing rather than pulling a favor, kind of things. So those are a very broad overview of the four profiles or that the test will come up with. And yeah, maybe you saw yourself in some of those profiles. What I've just described, of course, as I said, is the real extreme of all of those. And very few people are right out on the extremes. Most people are going to be a blend of all four of those, but you will have one dominant profile. My dominant profile is steel. You may well have already spotted that in the way that I speak, in the way that I deliver these podcasts. Those of you that have worked with me will know that I talk about process and following a process. You'll know a lot, those that work with me will know that I've got a blueprint for various elements of delivering a project, because that's how I have learned how to deliver projects over my career. Now, I asked this question to Roger Hamilton when I was working with him a good number of years ago. I asked him which profile would actually be the best profile to be a project manager, thinking, well, that's my business. Am I the right profile to be a project manager? And actually, he gave me the answer based on the eight profile test. But the answer he gave me would be a blend of tempo and steel. So if you came out as a tempo profile or you came out as a steel profile, then those are the best two profiles to be a natural project manager. And that's not to say that if you came out as Dynamo or Blaze, you shouldn't be a project manager. I think what you need to be aware of is that project management is not your natural skill. And it could be that you need to be super vigilant of those other aspects, the finishing things off, the detail, process, and that kind of thing, and be aware of the things you're a little bit weaker on or not naturally inclined to do, so that you can close up the gaps really to some extent. So and you may decide, and you may have realized from what I've been saying here, that you may have realized that you need more people around you. And if you're going to build a team around you, you really need to be engaging people with different profiles to you. So rather than have someone that's the same profile, you need someone that's perhaps on the opposite side, or certainly one of the other three, so that you are now building a more balanced team around you. In reality, if you're going out for a drink on a Friday night with your best mate, they probably want to have the same profile as you, or one removed. And that when I say one removed, I'm talking about a circle here, a circle where effectively Dynamo is at 12 o'clock, Blaze is at 3 o'clock, Tempo is at 6 o'clock, and Steel is at 9 o'clock. And if you will probably find your best mates, and in most cases your life partner, is one profile away from you, or indeed the same profile as you, because naturally as friends, that's where we gravitate to. But from a business perspective, we should be looking at having ideally one of each profile. And we should be thinking about, when we're engaging people, what is the best profile for that role that we're engaging. Very recently, I recruited a replacement property manager. So this is someone to look after my property on the ground. I've got administrators that do a lot of the paperwork, but what I really needed was someone that could go to the properties on a regular basis, get involved with tenant sourcing and moving the tenants in, and of course day-to-day management of things that were going on with the tenants and bits and pieces like that. Now, what is the best profile for that? Well, this is all someone who will follow processes, someone that gets on and makes things happen, follows through tasks, and diligently delivers and gets things done right through to close. What's that profile? That profile is tempo. So we ran adverts. I shortlisted some people from those replies that came in there, and I immediately sent them the Genius test. And I only interviewed people who came back as tempo profile. So I didn't even bother wasting my time interviewing people that came through with different profiles because I knew that the person I needed was someone who could follow processes and follow a task list and just get things done. There's a lot more to the profile than I went through, by the way, and there's other attributes that that led me to make that decision. So this is just a brief overview. If you stay subscribed to Roger Hamilton's marketing, you will learn a huge amount more about this. If you go deeper into it, as I've done, you'll know so much more about the different profiles. But as I say, for me, it's made a massive difference to my business. And I'll continue to use them. And it also helps me understand how I engage and talk to other people. I can recognize a lot of traits in people just from having a conversation with them. So I don't even need to ask everyone to do a profile test. And by knowing or establishing what kind of profile they are, I now know how to speak to them differently. And I now also know how to work with them and how to help them grow their business because I know where their strengths are naturally and I know where their weaknesses are naturally. And notice that I say the word naturally because we can all learn other things. We can all close up gaps in our awareness and in what we do, but this is very much what is natural. Roger Hamilton calls it flow. You might have heard other people call it flow. When are you in your flow? Now, I said I would come back to me understanding and realizing that I was steel profile. Every month when I was working at the last company I was working at as part of the role, I had to do monthly management accounts. And we'd get those. The monthly management accounts had to be delivered something like the second Thursday of the month. On the last Friday of the month, somewhere around about 3 o'clock or so, our financial director would give us financial reports, which we would need to go through, update budgets against, and we'd have to submit our our updated budgets and everything by the following Thursday. So the idea was he delivered them to us on a Friday at 3 o'clock. Most people would come in on Monday and they would work on it over the next few days, as well as the rest of their management as well, and deliver them by Thursday. I, being steel profile, getting excited by spreadsheets, wanting to know where I was with my numbers because I resonate, I get excited around spreadsheets and numbers. I would work late on that Friday and do most of my reports on that Friday afternoon. I would be in the office till 6:30 or so. And for me, I wanted to hit the weekend knowing my numbers. I wanted to be excited and engaged. And I wanted also to start the following week not thinking, oh, I've got all of these things to deal with. Lots of my colleagues would leave it until very much the last minute. Possibly those that weren't steel profile were leaving it late. Whereas I was doing mine early. I used to think I was a little bit weird doing that. I'd have to agree. I was definitely a bit weird doing that. But ultimately, that I found out later on was a natural trait of my profile. The other thing I realized later on was a natural trait of my profile, completely away from business perspectives, is a steel profile was probably the person in the kitchen at a party, the person who did the music, and was not the life and soul of the party. That was absolutely me. The Blazes were the life and soul of the party. I was putting the music on. It needed a little bit more knowledge. I didn't need to be engaging with everyone. And naturally, I'd wait for people to come and speak to me rather than me go and speak to them. And that's exactly how I still am in in networking events and things like that, even now. So yeah, I've opened up a little bit to you in there. The key thing here, guys, is now I understand it so much more. I understand how to manage it, and I know the people that I need to have around me, and that's to a certain extent is how my business has now grown. I would encourage you to look at your businesses in the same way, and particularly consider how you're managing some of the delivery of some of your project, particularly if you are a Dynamo or Blaze profile, where some of the key attributes of a project manager are not going to be natural for you. Have an awareness that they're not natural, plug up the gaps as necessary, or indeed bring someone else in to deliver those projects for you, and go out and be a good Dynamo or Blaze, finding new deals, engaging with people, bringing in the funds. You're going to find all of that way, way simpler than those of us that are naturally tempo or naturally steel. So all the best with this. If you haven't done the test, then just look for the link that I've put into the show notes. Click on that link, and it will take you less than 5 minutes to do the test, get the outcome, and then maybe go back and listen to podcasts for a second time, just so that it all makes more sense to you. So thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to catching up with you again very, very soon.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. Please do like, share, and leave a comment where you can. If you need any guidance or advice with anything to do with your refurbishments or conversions, then don't hesitate to reach out. You can book a free call with me by clicking on the link at the top of my website, refurbishmentmastery.com. There's other ways you can contact me in the show notes as well. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.